Hello everyone, welcome everyone to the channel's Strange Night podcast. Story 1. Screams in the Void. The Erased Cosmonauts. We often gaze up at the night sky and find it peaceful, even poetic. But have you ever wondered how many secrets are buried forever behind that ink-black veil and those shimmering stars? How many souls have drifted into the void and never returned? No news, no headlines, no monuments in their honor. Today, Strange Night podcast takes you back to the 1960s, the height of the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union. While the world cheered for names like Yuri Gagarin and Neil Armstrong, in the darkest corners of history, there exists a bone-chilling file regarding the lost cosmonauts, the men and women who were erased from existence. In the suburbs of Turin, Italy, lived two brothers and amateur radio experts, Achille and Giovanni Giudica Cordiglia. They were self-taught geniuses who built equipment so sensitive it could intercept signals from satellites orbiting high above our heads. On a night in May 1961, while scanning secret Soviet frequencies, they captured a sound that would alter their lives forever, and perhaps humanity's entire perception of the cosmos. From the depths of the abyss, a woman's voice emerged. It wasn't the voice of a hero claiming victory. It was the voice of a woman standing at the gates of death. She was screaming in absolute despair as her spacecraft began to incinerate during re-entry into the atmosphere.
"I can see the flames. Can you hear me? I see the flames."
Her voice choked, punctuated by the shrill alarms of failing machinery.
"I feel hot. I feel hot. Am I falling? Can you hear me? Damn it, it's so hot."
Imagine for a moment. You are sitting in a cramped steel capsule, utterly alone in the infinite void, watching as fire begins to lick the hull of your ship. You know you are being burned alive, while the rest of the world below is sleeping peacefully in their beds. But the most terrifying part wasn't the death itself. It was the denial. The Soviet Union never released any information about a female cosmonaut in space at that time. If you aren't on the list, you never existed. But that wasn't the only signal the Cordiglia brothers captured. Before that, they had picked up the heartbeat of another cosmonaut. A steady thump, thump, thump that suddenly grew erratic, racing faster and faster until it flatlined into a single, eternal P. A life extinguished among the stars in the absolute silence of the vacuum. Many scientists and government officials claim these recordings are hoaxes. They say it's just radio noise or a staged performance. But if you listen to those tapes yourself, you will hear a raw, visceral terror in that voice that is impossible to fake. It is the scream of someone who knows they are about to be forgotten by history. There are even darker theories suggesting these cosmonauts didn't just suffer technical failures. They encountered something out there. Secret reports from later astronauts spoke of strange lights and shadow entities lurking just outside their windows. Is space truly empty? Or is it a gargantuan trap for the curious? The story of the erased cosmonauts reminds us that to pay for progress, humanity has paid in blood and silence. Tonight, when you look up at the stars, take a moment to think of them, those souls still drifting somewhere out there in the minus 270-degree cold, carrying screams that were never answered. The sky above isn't just full of light. It is a graveyard of nameless tombs. Story 2. The Colonial Parkway Murders. Along the scenic coast of Virginia lies a stretch of road known as the Colonial Parkway, With its towering pines and winding curves hidden beneath the moonlight, it was once the perfect getaway for young couples seeking privacy. But in the late 1980s, this road transformed into a literal killing field, where fear crawled through every shadow and leaf. It began in 1986. A car was found abandoned on a roadside embankment. Inside were the bodies of Kathleen Thomas and Rebecca Dowski. The two young women had been bound, their throats cut deep, and the car had been doused in gasoline in a failed attempt to incinerate the evidence. The first chilling detail: there were no signs of a struggle. Purses and jewelry were left untouched. The killer didn't want money. He wanted something far more brutal. But that was only the start of the nightmare. Over the next 3 years, more couples vanished, only to be found in similar, horrific conditions. Some disappeared without a trace, leaving only their hollow cars sitting by the shoulder of the road. The keys were still in the ignition, and their clothes were folded neatly on the seats, as if they had simply stepped out for a moment and were swallowed by the darkness. The most haunting aspect of this dossier is the modus operandi. In every instance, the cars were found perfectly parked. Why did these victims, young, athletic, and alert, allow a stranger to approach and bind them so easily? The answer that investigators proposed sent shockwaves through Virginia. The killer might have been wearing a uniform. He may have used a police badge or a flashing light to signal them to pull over. The poor victims lowered their windows with a sense of trust, only to realize that behind that uniform were the eyes of a demon. Imagine you are sitting in a car with the person you love, seeing red and blue lights flashing behind you. You pull over, feeling safe because the police are here. But when the door opens, what greets you isn't the law. It's a cold blade and lengths of rope. You have no chance to fight back because you were conquered by your own respect for authority. Decades have passed, and the identity of the Colonial Parkway killer remains an enigma. Was he a corrupt police officer, a veteran obsessed with the hunt, or simply a psychopath clever enough to impersonate a man of the law? The DNA at the scenes was too degraded. The clues led to one dead end after another. Many believe he is still out there, perhaps aged or hiding behind another respectable facade. But every night on the Colonial Parkway, when the fog rolls in to blanket the pines, people still whisper. If someone knocks on your window in the middle of the night, do not open it. Because not every flashing light brings salvation. There are killers who are never caught. They simply stop, leaving behind a terrifying void for the survivors, and a reminder that the worst nightmares often wear the costumes we trust the most. Story 3. Skinwalker, the stealer of identities. In the lands of the Navajo in the American Southwest, there is a name that the indigenous people rarely dare to speak aloud. They believe that merely uttering its name draws its attention. That entity is called the Skinwalker. In legend, a Skinwalker is a dark witch who betrayed their tribe, performing the most horrific rituals to gain supernatural power, the ability to shapeshift into any animal they desire, usually a wolf, a bear, or a crow. But these are no ordinary beasts. If you look into their eyes, you won't see the wild innocence of nature, but the cold, calculating, and malevolent intelligence of a human. In the mid-1990s, at the infamous Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, the Sherman family experienced the most terrifying nights of their lives. One afternoon, they spotted a massive wolf approaching. It was twice the size of a normal wolf and appeared strangely docile. But when it suddenly lunged at a calf, Mr.
Sherman drew his most powerful rifle and fired a shot directly into its chest at point-blank range. A bullet that should have taken down a grizzly bear did nothing. The creature simply stood there, staring at him with cold, vacant eyes. Not a single drop of blood fell. After several more shots, it casually turned and walked into the brush, leaving behind massive paw prints that abruptly vanished into thin air, as if it had flown away or dissolved into the atmosphere. But the most terrifying thing about the skinwalker isn't its physical strength, it's its psychological manipulation. Many witnesses report sitting in their homes and hearing the voices of their mothers or children calling to them from the deep woods. But when they look around, their loved ones are sitting right beside them in the living room. The thing calling from the darkness is an entity trying to lure you out for a brutal hunt. Imagine driving on a deserted desert road and seeing a creature running alongside your car at 100 kilometers per hour. It looks at you through the glass, its face a deformed blend of beast and man, with a pale smile and glowing eyes. You floor the gas, but it stays there, never breaking eye contact, waiting for a single moment of weakness. To this day, scientists and the U.S. government have secretly poured millions of dollars into researching this ranch, but electronic equipment consistently malfunctions, and cameras are often cut off at the exact moment something bizarre occurs. The Skinwalker is not just a Native American legend. It is a reminder that this world still has forbidden zones, places where the laws of physics are bent and creatures from the shadows are silently watching us. If one night you hear a loved one calling your name from the darkness of the woods or the desert, remember one thing: never answer, and absolutely never open the door, because the thing standing out there is likely no longer human. Story 4. Footprints in the Snow. The Hinterkaifeck Murders. In March 1922, at a remote farmstead named Hinterkaifeck in Bavaria, Germany, the Gruber family began to notice things that defied explanation. The patriarch, Andreas Gruber, told neighbors he found a strange newspaper in the yard that no one in the family had bought. Then he discovered a pair of footprints in the snow leading from the edge of the forest straight to the farm. But there were no footprints leading back out. Over the following nights, the sound of strange footsteps echoed from the attic. House keys began to vanish one by one. Andreas searched the property with a shotgun but found no one. He didn't know that death wasn't far away. It was right above his head, hiding behind the wooden planks of the ceiling, watching the family's every move through tiny cracks. By March 31st, a heavy silence fell over the farm. Neighbors grew worried when the children didn't show up for school and the mailbox overflowed. When they finally broke down the door, a nightmare awaited them in the barn. 4 bodies: Andreas, his wife, their daughter, and their young granddaughter, lay stacked on top of one another under a layer of straw. All had been slaughtered with a mattock, a sharp, heavy farming tool. Inside the house, the newly arrived maid and the 2-year-old grandson met the same fate right in their cribs. But what sent a chill down the investigators' spines wasn't just the killings. It was what happened after they died. Forensics determined the Grubers were killed on Friday night. However, neighbors insisted that smoke continued to rise from the farmhouse chimney throughout Saturday and Sunday. Someone had lit the fire. Someone had eaten food in the kitchen. And even more disturbing,
The livestock had been fed and cared for. The killer didn't flee immediately. He stayed in the house, living with the corpses for 3 days, calmly carrying on as if he were the new master of the farm.
Police interrogated hundreds of people, from former farm hands to vagrants, but no one was ever convicted. Some spoke of ghosts. Others of a former husband reported dead in the war who had returned for revenge. But the most terrifying theory remains. A stranger had slipped into the attic a week prior, silently observing the family, learning their routines, and waiting for the perfect moment to descend. Think about this. Tonight, when you turn off the lights and go to bed, if you hear a strange sound in the ceiling, it might just be the wind or a mouse, or it could be someone who entered your house a week ago and has never left. Interkaifeck stands as a reminder that the safest places are sometimes the most dangerous, when the enemy isn't standing outside your door, but is breathing the same air as you, right inside your home. Story 5. The wow signal. A call from the void. Imagine sitting in a silent room at the Big Ear Observatory at Ohio State University. Around you, there is only the hum of machinery and thousands of pages of paper printing out soulless numbers from the depths of space. This was Jerry Eamon's reality on the night of August 15th, 1977. His mission was to search for a trace, a tiny piece of evidence that we are not alone in this vast darkness. For years, all Big Ear had captured was the meaningless static of stars and distant cosmic explosions. Until 10:16 p.m. that night, the printer's needle began to dance frantically. Instead of the usual monotonous ones and twos, a sequence of characters appeared. 6EQUJ5. Days later, when Jerry Eamon reviewed the printout, he froze. These characters weren't random noise. They represented a signal 30 times stronger than the surrounding cosmic background. It was focused, sharp, and, most importantly, it was exactly at the frequency of 1420 megahertz, the frequency of hydrogen, the most common element in the universe. Scientists believe this would be the universal language if an alien civilization ever tried to contact us. Stunned, Jerry took a red pen, circled the sequence, and wrote a single word in the margin. Wow. The signal lasted exactly 72 seconds. Why 72 seconds? Because that was the maximum amount of time the Big Ear telescope could observe a fixed point in the sky as the Earth rotated. This meant the source of the signal was a fixed object in space, located in the constellation of Sagittarius. But here's the chilling part. Immediately after those 72 seconds, the signal vanished. Completely. For nearly 50 years, scientists have used the most modern and powerful equipment to scan those same coordinates thousands of times. They have never heard it again. It's like walking through a deep forest at night, hearing a scream call your name once. But when you turn around, there is only the deathly silence of the trees. Many theories have been proposed. A passing comet, a reflection from a secret military satellite, a technical glitch. All have been debunked. The wow signal was too pure and too strong to be a natural phenomenon. So what was 6EQUJ5? A greeting from a civilization that collapsed millions of years ago? A warning broadcast about a catastrophe we have yet to understand? Or, more frighteningly, was it the knock on the door from a hunter, testing to see if anyone was
home on this tiny blue planet. Think about this. The universe is so vast that a signal traveling from Sagittarius would take hundreds of years to reach Earth. This means when we heard that call in 1977, the sender might have already been dead, or their planet destroyed long ago. We are listening to the echoes of ghosts from a distant past.
Tonight, as you look up at the twinkling stars, remember that the universe is not silent. It is waiting. And perhaps the fact that we haven't heard another signal is a blessing. Because if we ever catch a clearer call, would we really be ready to face who is on the other end of the line? Story 6. The Cecil Hotel, where spirits are imprisoned. If there is one place in the world that could be called a magnet for tragedy, it is undoubtedly the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. Since opening its doors in the 1920s, this building has witnessed dozens of suicides, murders, and has served as a sanctuary for some of America's most notorious serial killers, including Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. But the case that still makes the world shudder to this day is the mystery of Elisa Lam. In 2013, Elisa, a Canadian college student, suddenly vanished while staying at the hotel. 2 weeks later, guests began complaining about low water pressure and water that had a strange taste and a dark, murky color. When the maintenance crew climbed to the rooftop to inspect the building's massive water tanks, they found Elisa's decomposing body inside. The police released a surveillance video from the Cecil's elevator, capturing Elisa's final moments. This footage quickly became one of the most haunting documents in internet history. In the video, Elisa enters the elevator, but the doors refuse to close. Her behavior is profoundly abnormal. She cowers in the corner of the cabin, peeking out into the hallway as if hiding from someone chasing her, though the hallway is empty. Most terrifying is when she steps outside. Her limbs contort into inhuman positions, as if she is talking to or being manipulated by an invisible entity. Moments later, she vanishes into the darkness, and the elevator begins to function again, as if nothing had ever happened. How could a petite young woman climb to the roof alone, bypass the alarm system, scale a 3-meter-high water tank, and seal the heavy lid from the inside? Forensics concluded it was an accidental drowning, but millions refuse to believe it. Many believe the Cecil is not just a building, it is a vortex of negative energy. There are rooms there that housekeeping staff refuse to enter alone. They tell stories of black shadows flitting across mirrors, whispers in forgotten languages, and the sensation of a cold hand brushing the back of their necks while they work. Was Elisa Lam pushed by a psychological breakdown? Or did she truly encounter something malevolent lurking in the smoke-stained hallways of the Cecil? Something that has existed since the days of the Night Stalker, eroding the minds of the vulnerable and luring them toward their most tragic end. Remember, sometimes demons aren't in hell. They are in the room right next to yours, in an old hotel in the heart of the city. If you ever visit Los Angeles and step into the lobby of the Cecil, be careful with the elevator buttons. Do not stare too long into the dark corners of the hallways. And most importantly, if the water in your room tastes strange, never open the lid of the tank on the roof. Because some secrets are better left lying in the darkness forever. Story 7. Mothman, the harbinger of death. Imagine you are driving with friends late one night in 1966, passing through an old explosives manufacturing area in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Suddenly, out of the darkness, 2 glowing red spots like burning coals appear. They aren't headlights,
Nor are they the eyes of any ordinary animal. They are the eyes of the Mothman. The first witnesses described it as a creature over 7 feet tall, humanoid in shape, but with gargantuan wings folded behind its back. It had no discernible head. Instead, its piercing red eyes were set directly into its chest. It didn't fly like a bird. It flapped its wings and launched into the sky like a rocket, chasing cars traveling at speeds of over 100 kilometers per hour. For the next year, Point Pleasant fell into a state of total panic. Residents reported bizarre phenomena: televisions flickering with static, phone calls filled with terrifying screeching noises, and dark silhouettes watching them through their windows at night. But the Mothman never attacked anyone. It simply stood there, watching, with those sorrowful, glowing red eyes. Those who looked into them reported a feeling of overwhelming dread and profound sadness, as if a horrific tragedy was looming just overhead. And that tragedy did arrive. On December 15, 1967, during rush hour, the Silver Bridge connecting West Virginia and Ohio suddenly collapsed into the freezing Ohio River. 46 people lost their lives. After that day, the Mothman vanished from Point Pleasant entirely. Some believe the Mothman caused the accident. However, paranormal researchers believe in a more terrifying theory. It is an interdimensional entity that appears only to warn of impending mass casualties. Where the Mothman is seen, disaster follows. Reports suggest it was spotted in Chernobyl before the nuclear meltdown, in New York before 9/11, and even in Fukushima before the Great East Japan earthquake. What is it? A fallen angel? A mutated monster? Or the physical manifestation of fate itself? The most terrifying feeling isn't being hunted by a monster. It is seeing a bizarre creature and knowing that its presence means you or those around you are about to face death. The Mothman doesn't bring death. It is merely the mirror reflecting the catastrophe that is already on its way. Tonight, if you happen to look out your window and see 2 glowing red embers staring at you from the treetops or a power pole, don't bother running. Look back at your life. Look at those around you. Because perhaps the bridge you are about to cross or the building you are standing in will not be there tomorrow. The Mothman is still out there somewhere, flapping its pitch-black wings over sleeping cities, waiting for the next disaster to reveal itself. Story 8. The Ghost Ship Octavius, the Eternal Mummies. On October 11th, 1775, the crew of the whale ship Herald was drifting off the coast of Greenland when they spotted a ghost. A tattered, ancient sailing ship was aimlessly wandering through a labyrinth of gargantuan icebergs. It was the Octavius. As the sailors of the Herald climbed aboard, they were enveloped by a suffocating silence. No voices, no scurrying rats, only the wind whistling through the shattered masts. But the true horror began when they descended into the captain's cabin. There, they found the captain of the Octavius still sitting upright at his desk. His hand still clutched a quill pen. His lips were pressed tight, and his eyes stared blankly at the logbook open before him. He was not alive, yet his body was perfectly intact, frozen rock solid by the Arctic chill. In the corner of the room, a woman lay covered by a blanket on a bunk, and a small boy remained huddled, clutching a rag doll. All of them transformed into statues of ice, eternal and unmoving. Terrified, the sailors of the Herald grabbed the captain's logbook and fled that spectral vessel. As they examined the log, the staggering truth came to light. The final entry had been written in 1762. This meant that the Octavius and its ice mummies had been drifting across the ocean for 13 years. In 1761, The ship had left port in England, bound for China. To save time, the captain had recklessly attempted to navigate the Northwest Passage, a treacherous, ice-choked graveyard of a sea. They became trapped. For 13 years, while the world outside changed, the Octavius moved silently through dead waters, carrying a crew long deceased, yet still sitting at their posts, as if they were still on duty.
The question that haunts historians is this: how did a ship with no one at the helm navigate through the world's most dangerous, icy mazes for over a decade without sinking? Was there an unseen force guiding the vessel, or did the captain's soul, even in death, refuse to let go of the wheel? Many mariners claim that on foggy nights in the northern reaches, they still see the silhouette of a sailing ship gliding silently, leaving no wake. If you look closely through the mist, you might see a man sitting by a cabin window, quill in hand, continuing to write the journal entries for a voyage that never ends. Be wary of things that are frozen, for the cold does not just kill life, it preserves agony and souls that cannot find peace. The Octavius may have eventually vanished into the deep, but the echo of its 13-year journey in the dark remains, a reminder that the ocean has a way of keeping those who dare to challenge it. Story 9. Black Holes, the Graveyard of Time. Throughout our journey tonight, darkness has always been a place where fears reside. But there is a type of darkness in this universe that is not merely the absence of light. It is an entity, a tear in the very fabric of space-time. We call it a black hole. Imagine you're drifting in a spacecraft approaching a black hole. From a distance, it looks like a pitch-black eye devouring every starlight around it. When you cross the event horizon, the point of no return, you officially enter a graveyard. Not a graveyard of bodies, but a graveyard of reality itself. At this boundary, a terrifying phenomenon occurs: time dilation. If someone were watching you from a distance, they would see you slow down bit by bit until you appear perfectly frozen, like an eternal statue at the edge of the void. To them, you would age and vanish over billions of years. But for you, time passes with a cruel intensity in the opposite direction. You see the entire future of the universe flash before your eyes, like a film on fast forward. You witness stars dying, galaxies colliding, and the very end of the universe, all within a few fleeting seconds. You are trapped between a moment that lasts forever and a death that arrives too fast to even comprehend. As you fall deeper toward the center, your body undergoes a process scientists call spaghettification. The extreme gravitational tidal forces pull at every atom, stretching you out like a thin string. You don't just die, you are shredded out of existence. But the most frightening part lies at the singularity in the center. This is where human mathematics and logic become completely useless. Some physicists hypothesize that a black hole isn't just a place of destruction, but a portal. Perhaps what is swallowed here emerges in another universe? Or, more hauntingly, perhaps your soul and your information are stored forever on the surface of the black hole, like a two-dimensional image imprisoned in an eternal library of shadow. The black hole is the ultimate reminder of humanity's insignificance. We fight our wars, we fear our ghosts, but in the end, we are all orbiting these celestial monsters. The universe doesn't need to send a killer to your door. It only needs to wait for time and space
to collapse upon themselves. As you turn off this podcast and look out the window at the night sky, remember that somewhere out there, regions of space are swallowing millions of stars into absolute silence. And one day, when the last star flickers out, the black holes will be the only things left, sitting in the dark, guarding the graveyard of time. Welcome to the very end of the night. I hope you can still find your way back.
Story 10. The Zombies of Haiti. The Horror of Eternal Servitude. In popular culture, we see zombies as bloodthirsty monsters chasing the living in horror movies. But the true origin of the zombie from the island of Haiti is far more sinister than any cinema screen could depict. It isn't about an attack on the living. It is about the imprisonment of the soul. In 1980, a man named Clairvius Narcisse suddenly appeared in his home village in Haiti. The terrifying part? Narcisse had been declared dead and buried 18 years prior. Narcisse told a story that no sane mind would want to believe. He had been targeted by a voodoo sorcerer, a Bokor, who used a magical powder to plunge his body into a state of apparent death. He was fully conscious but paralyzed, unable to move, unable to speak. He felt the cold touch of the shroud as they dressed him for his funeral. He heard the heavy thud of earth hitting his coffin lid as he was buried alive. A few nights later, the sorcerer returned to dig him up. He was beaten and forced to drink a potion that kept him in a state of permanent delirium. For 18 years, he was turned into a literal zombie, working as a slave on sugarcane plantations with no memory, no will, and no purpose other than to obey. Scientists later discovered that this magic powder contained tetrodotoxin, a potent neurotoxin found in pufferfish. It can lower the heart rate and breathing so drastically that even medical equipment can be fooled. But the true horror isn't in the chemistry. It's in the spiritual belief. Haitians believe that when a Bokor turns you into a zombie, he steals your T-bone ange, your conscious soul, and traps it inside a jar. Imagine standing there, seeing your loved ones but being unable to call their names. You watch your own hands work until they bleed, yet you feel no pain. You are a prisoner in your own skin, a vessel of flesh and bone, walking the earth, while your spirit is shackled in a jar belonging to an evil master. It is a death without a grave, an existence without light. The greatest human fear is not turning to ash, but being turned into a permanent tool, never finding the mercy of an end. Today, stories of zombies still drift through the dark nights of Haiti. They say that occasionally, in the vast sugarcane fields, you can still encounter figures walking with hollow, vacant eyes. They are not ghosts. They are the people who were robbed of their right to die. Tonight, as you lie down in your comfortable bed, feel your breath and the beat of your heart. Cherish the fact that you are still the master of your own will. Because somewhere out there are those waiting to steal your spirit and turn you into a wandering shadow. Our journey ends here for tonight. Do not let anyone trap your soul in the darkness. Thank you for listening to this series. Please like and subscribe to the channel to hear the next series.